I've just learned more about, I think, business and teams for that kind of journey bit.
Yeah.
And there's this interesting, it's not necessarily fintech, but it was, startup through scale up through whatever.
Yeah.
And you get to a head count of 14 and you'll plateau or die.
Yeah.
So you have to invest a little bit in middle, and then you get to like 27. I had like 6 reports, and it's not possible to scale anything at that point. So you have to start investing in different middle layers, and what worked bootstrapping here doesn't work here because you need more defined lines of reporting to give to your board to make better top level decisions. And I think people who've never done business before have this mentality of, shit only slides downhill. It's completely, shit slides uphill a lot, And if you don't have all of the right systems, the right ops, right reporting bit, you've only got so much time.
Yeah.
So you've got to both optimize and innovate at the same time while trying to stay on, the vision path. And if you don't have that path of, we want to get to, boiling the business down to one number, is it annual recurring revenue? Is it number of customers? Is it flat revenue? Are you going to go and chase a lot of BD to get to the revenue mark, or are you going to optimize what you have to get to the revenue mark?
Yeah.
We had a benchmark of trying to match a, not even a competitor, someone in the Nordics that got acquired by Binance or whatever. They do this much volume and this much revenue with a 40-person headcount. That's the benchmark. So we focus more on how do we get better data sets, how do we inform people better, how do we manage people better to not max out the headcount, to try and add more to the top line.
Yeah.
And is that in our product? Is that in our marketing? Is that in our approach? And that's where you start to, tune the recipe rather than just add more ingredients.
I think it's a perfect segue into to your background. I mean, you've kind of given.
We've started.
We've done like a Joe Rogan. We've just sort of rolled straight into it. But maybe walk us through your career from cybersecurity to founding CoinPass.
Yeah. I mean, all the way from the start. I mean, I finished high school, thought I was going to go into uni. The way they do the university scores in Australia is a bit naff. That's not great for our non-UK audience. And I got moved down, so I couldn't go directly to university, so I ended up just doing part-time. Turns out uni wasn't for me, in terms of you're following a set structure and a framework, and it was like business and project management or something like that, really, really vague, nothing applicable. I, as every other Australian, went to hospitality, worked my ass off, had 3 jobs, built a race car, all that kind of good stuff you do.
In Australia?
In Australia, yeah. And then I think I was at the same kind of bar club kind of thing for 3.5 years. And then someone that's like one of the lifers that's been there a long time was like, only 18 more months and you get your 5-year badge. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to wear that 5-year badge, not a chance. So I went into, you call it college over here, we call it TAFE in Australia. Did cybersecurity and network engineering, I think along those lines, I think it was. It was 20 years ago, so I can't remember now.
Good time
but,
to do it.
It was a 2-year course I finished in 9 months, purely out of, there are 2 types of entrepreneurs. You either run away from a fire or you run towards something shiny. And running towards something shiny is very difficult for a lot of people because, like, is it money? Is it a car? Is it a house? What's your idea of wealth? And that constantly changes. So running away from a fire is a very, very powerful kind of metric. I wanted to get out of hospitality. I wanted to start a proper career.
Just on that fire though, because obviously there's getting out of hospitality, but there's probably something deeper than that.
Yeah, it's something deeper than that. It's that, all the decisions up to this point has landed me here. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you've got to take a responsibility of, like, I'm exactly where I deserve to be. I got my grades in school. I had the relationships that I had. I was either self-motivated or motivated by family, whatever it was going to be. But, you look in the mirror, you're exactly what you look like. You look in your bank balance, that's exactly what you've earned. If you want more, you've got to either run towards something shiny, you've got to run away from a fire. And for me, the fire was, I don't want to be badged as stuck in this role forever. I know that I want to do something more. I have to uplift myself. Coming from, my parents divorced very, very early. I'm an only child. Always found it not hard to make friendships and stuff, but I never really felt like I had to go out of my way to impress people. So you kind of keep your circle small. And I think once you leave school and you get into working life and stuff, you're kind of on your own path. And I decided that, I didn't want to do this anymore. I wanted to uplift and I wanted to do something else. And that was the fire. And we had our graduation ceremony at the casino and convention center on the Gold Coast. After that ceremony, I went straight down to the staff office and put an application in for 5 or 6 different roles. Got a call a week later. They wanted me in the IT department. That was my first proper, I suppose, career job when I was 20, thrown completely in the deep end. The person that was training me, a casino in London is quite quaint, quite small, cute, I would call it. The size of the ones we have in Australia are the size of a Vegas casino. And you have an IT staff of about 8 people. So it's a very, very large scale operation. And you have to be registered with the Australian Federal Police. You've got to do all the background checks, all that kind of good stuff. And the person training me got fired in my 3rd week. So it was literally in the deep end at, 12 o'clock, midnight, 2 in the morning, working on tech, fixing issues, all that kind of stuff at a very, very large scale. And that was where I kind of had to do, I suppose, the most growing up I've ever done in my early 20s, looking after a casino site literally by yourself at midnight, 2 in the morning. Did that for a number of years. Had an opportunity to do a long distance charity rally in 2010. So myself and my good friend at the time, who eventually became my co-founder here at CoinPass, we decided to move from Australia to the UK. It was easier to get a working visa, to explain a one-way flight ticket, because we're going to fly from Australia to London and then drive 2/3 of the way back to Mongolia. And that was kind of our entry to come to the UK.
So what drove that decision?
Finishing work at midnight, putting on a DVD or something like that at 2 in the morning, like Cannonball Run, Gumball Rally, all that kind of stuff when you're younger, and cars and all that kind of stuff. And, I can't afford a Lamborghini right now, but it'd be really cool if we found a cheaper one. And so we found a cheaper one, and we looked at our watch, and we're like, well, it's 11 in the morning in the UK. Let's just call the organizer. And he's like, I'll take your entry fee, but if you're not at Goodwood in 7 weeks, you don't qualify to start. And 7 weeks later, we were standing on the start line at Goodwood, where they run the festival of speed, and drove up the hill in our 1.2 litre Fiat Bravo. So it was quite a, very, very big step to, cancel your life, pack a backpack and a toolbox, fly to the other side of the world. I'd never been to Europe before. And then we drove 2/3 of the way back in 4 weeks. So 10,000 miles in 4 weeks in a 1.2 litre Fiat we bought on the internet. That kind of kicked off coming to the UK. I worked for a number of managed service providers.
So was the plan always to stay in the UK, or
it was kind of a side plan. It was get to Mongolia and then figure it out. Really, I asked for 8 weeks off work, and my boss said, all your colleagues are in their 40s and 50s. They have kids and mortgages. You're 25 and you don't. If I have another redundancy come up, you're next. That might be in 6 months. It might be in 2 years. So I took that as kind of a sign. Just quit, take all my annual leave as a bonus payout, and start something new. And I suppose that's where I got more, open to taking an opportunity when it gets put in front of you. You can either stay what you're doing, try and move up the ladder. I've done projects in Sydney and Brisbane and Melbourne. I travel all up and down Australia doing tech projects for the casino group. But, it wasn't really a challenge anymore, because I've been doing tech and that kind of level for a number of years. And I'm like, well, why not take this as a big bonus payout, $30,000, $40,000, and, not start a new life, but, take a side quest, if anything. Came over here, had the visa purely just to get over here, came back, and did the couch surfing bit for a little bit, did some hospitality jobs for a bit,
before Airbnb,
a bit pre-Airbnb, pre-Uber for all those people in the
yeah, I can't imagine.
Did a number of little jobs just to kind of wet my beak and kind of welcome to London. Worked at Fortnum & Mason, Harvey Nichols, all those kind of places just for fun. Landed a pretty good role at a managed service firm that actually sponsored me to stay here, and that saw me through until I got off my working visa. And again, went through review process. You do your appraisals, your performance every year, and they said, where do you want to be in 3 years? And I said, I want to be operations director, because I know more about this business than the owners. And I got laughed out of my appraisal, and that was another cool, this is an opportunity moment. I decided to quit that job, and I had no other job to go to. I got a call from a headhunter on literally my last day of work at 2 in the afternoon saying, can you be at Mayfair at 2:45 for an interview? And I went, you want me to leave my desk now to go to a job interview? And I was in jeans and leather jacket and trainers. Little did I know I'd be walking into SoftBank Vision Fund. Office wasn't open, they weren't set up, there were still wires hanging out of the walls. During my interview, this guy walked through barefoot with a vape in his mouth, and I'm like, who's that? I go, that's Rajiv Misra, that's the head of SoftBank. Oh, him, okay. Quick Googling on the on the tube, kind of learning as much as you can about a business in 10 minutes. But I think I was the third or fourth person into the Vision Fund, helped setting up the office, the tech stack, cybersecurity, all of the little walled gardens between different departments, and had a really, really good 2 years there. And that was an environment where, I kind of slingshotted up very, very quickly to that kind of, they have £100 billion to invest into businesses. The office has to look good. Everyone's got to be on top of their game. We used to get a Deliveroo allowance per day just to keep everyone at their desk an extra hour a day. It was really, really good environment. You never wanted to be the weakest link. And a lot of the things I learned in that organization about, if you can do it slow but with good quality and the right people, you can get a good outcome. Or, do you need more people and speed? How do you retain that quality? And a lot of that, that little triangle of fast, quality, et cetera, et cetera.
And just on the culture piece, sorry, how did they instill that? You don't want to be the weakest link. We want to be in, like...
I think it was hiring the best people for the best job. When we're all kind of crammed in there like a startup, it's a very, very big startup, but we had, 40, 50 people crammed onto 3 levels. And I used to sit beside head of UK CFO, head of finance in the UK, chief legal operations, and one of the investment managers. And I'm just the tech guy. And so you're overhearing conversations all the day. Obviously, it's very strict and very NDA. We had to have comms training. As a tech guy, I thought that was quite funny to have comms training. But yeah, I got ambushed at the tube 2 or 3 times asking about what deal flow was going on at SoftBank. And you have to be brave and say no comment and hide the face and do all the stuff. You felt like being paparazzi stalked. And I'm just a tech guy, But during that time as well, after that appraisal from my last job where I got laughed out of, I started thinking for myself and having one of those moments again where I need to act a bit for myself. I need to evolve a little bit. I need to start a side business or a side hustle. Tried a number of things and not falling on property. Turns out, being an Australian, trying to start a property business in the UK is actually quite tough. And I got told multiple times, you're too Australian to get a mortgage. You need to put it in a limited company. But even doing that, you have to guarantee your own deals. So I actually made more capital and more money by networking with people and putting other people's deals together. I think I raised £7 or £8 million in a year for other people while working a full-time job in tech. So there's definitely no constraining to what anyone can do. If you find a right niche or you find a good way to talk to people, you find a way to put people together, you can literally achieve and do whatever you want. I think on the way over here to this podcast, I just walked past the Canadian embassy and there's I thought it was a food van, a big queue of people, and it's actually a mobile printing and photocopy station for all your documentation in front of the embassy. And I went, that is a brilliant opportunistic business. That's really simple. Stacks of paper, 3 printers, photocopy, they take emails, people can print their documents they don't have copies of in front of the embassy. And it was kind of one of those moments when I was at SoftBank to start CoinPass was I had the property business. I was my own consulting firm, consulting for SoftBank, making very, very good money and doing a bit of crypto on the side, just for my own investing really through the ICO boom in 2016, 2017. And I think one of the investor relations guys came up to me and was like, you're in crypto, you're a tech guy. How do I buy like 10 Bitcoin right now when Bitcoin's like $3,000? Really, really cheap. And I said, my advice was, buy it in US dollars, pay the 50, 60 basis points at your bank and jog on. I said, why can't I buy it in pounds? Why is there not a good solution in the UK? How do you buy it in pounds right now? And back in 2016, 2017, you were sending GBP over to Europe, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia. It would take maybe a week to send the money. You would get slipped on your trade 2, 3, 5% because most of the liquidity is still in US dollars. So they're kind of just doing a bit of a shell game there. And it would take sometimes 2 or 3 days to get your crypto into your own wallet. And then you said, why isn't there something better in the UK? And then that was kind of the, one of those other moments where I may have opened my big mouth and said, how hard can it be? Turns out it's very hard. But we kind of had, it was one of those other moments where I've got, 2 businesses here. They're both profitable. They're both doing very well. Why not start a third or focus on one, shut down the other one? And we put our own money together, the 3 founders, hired a couple of developers, did the brand, the marketing, drew out a very, very basic kind of business plan, of which I've still got on my wall at home. It's about an A4 page, about that big, with the business plan, the infrastructure, and the commercial model at the bottom. And we're still roughly kind of 60, 70% the same. Obviously, there's margin compression, But the business has remained pretty much from an idea wise kind of the same as it has been since 2018 when we first launched it.
And we'll go back to when you first launched the market, the environment you're in at the time, but just fast forward to the Rwanda acquisition, and where CoinPass got to. How quickly did you scale? What were the kind of key metrics that you got to?
So on that business plan, the goal was, or the plan was to sell. If this is going to be successful, is this just a flash in the pan? Is this idea actually marketable? I didn't know anything about go-to-market strategy. I kind of read a bunch of blogs about it, a bunch of YouTube videos, kind of self-taught, because I was a cybersecurity engineer. I was not a CEO and a strategist. And the goal was to sell one Bitcoin to one person and one transaction. Bitcoin was at £3,100. On the first day, someone wired us 10 grand and bought 3 Bitcoin. Okay, now we have to take this a bit more seriously. It's not just a bit of an idea, a bit of a float. It kind of started as a bit of passion idea about there's got to be a better way to do this. And we supported pound sterling on and off ramp before Coinbase cracking anybody. This is August 2018. I think the other competitors kind of came to market in early 2019 or something like that. So everything was still US dollar based, everything was euro based. We weren't the first to do GBP, but the first to do it natively, because our banking was here in the UK. It wasn't overseas, it wasn't offshore. We wanted to have a very pure, being Australian living in the UK is a bit, does that make it less pure? I don't know, but we're going to an audience that wanted to be UK based, UK focused, and eventually UK regulated and registered with the FCA. So we wanted to have those 3 pillars because we thought that was important to the type of investors we wanted to attract. And going from day one, couple of devs wearing many different hats, we tried to raise some funding early, but the market was still very, very low. No one's interested in investing very low in the market. Went through kind of 2 or 3 phases of should we try this, should we try that. We looked at crowdfunding, we looked at all these different things. We never did an ICO. And what ended up happening is that we were just too busy building the business for any one person to kind of duck out and focus on funding. So we actually grew organically for about 3 years, even through COVID, before we even attracted our first investor. And that was right around the time we got our FCA license, which we're about the 3rd in the UK to obtain one.
Okay. And going back to them when you started, there was Coinbase, there was Kraken, the environment must have been difficult, and you probably were told a lot of times, you'll get crushed by these guys. So
yeah, exactly. No, every single time we either talked to an investor, even a vendor, some banks didn't want to work with us, some liquidity providers didn't want to work with us because it's never going to work. I'm like, well, one thing we do differently as opposed to all of our competitors is that we take not necessarily one-to-one because that's not scalable, but we wanted to have a different way of interacting with our customers. I didn't want to use chatbots. I didn't want to send everything through support. That was back in the days where you would wait weeks, literally weeks for a response if your 2FA didn't work or you couldn't log in, where platforms would freeze down to, high volatility markets and stuff like that. So we knew we wanted to do our infrastructure differently. We never focused on building something bulky. It had to be scalable from inception. If you can handle 1,000 users, how do you handle 10,000? We don't need to scale it to 10,000 right now, but you need to build it in a way where you can adjust a few parameters and scale it out instantly. So that was always the way we built literally every button on the platform. So we don't have these, market critical outages. But one thing that and this is what kind of influenced, not really a pivot, but how we evolved the kind of culture and the customers we look after. We thought originally we were going to be targeting people between their 20s and 30s. They want to on-ramp and off-ramp really, really quickly. They want a little bit of customer care, customer support. They want to talk to someone directly. They want to build a relationship with their broker, like that old school kind of London finance. You pick up the phone to your broker, you either ask for a trade or you yell at them, one of the two. But we wanted to take a bit more of a professional approach, trying to be based in London, trying to do stuff a little bit differently. And what ended up happening, because we focused on those service pillars from being my experience in hospitality, coming over here and being a nobody in London, working my way up and building my career through the SoftBank piece, it was always about people and always about representation. And because we focused on those kind of service pillars, the type of users we actually attracted were in their 30s to mid 50s, and they were property investors, they were business owners, they were consultants, a lot of dentists and doctors for some reason. everyone that appreciates getting a personalized email, or having an account representative, someone they can ask a random question to. They send an email at 4 p.m. My £10,000 deposit hasn't cleared yet. Is there a problem? And getting a response really quickly, because they're a busy person. They've got more disposable capital. They're usually moving between a business and personal and dividends. They understand the tax regime a bit better. They understand the documentation we need for doing our compliance and stuff. And, they deposit bulkier amounts of capital. Would you rather have 1 million users depositing 100 quid each, or would you rather 1,000 users that put on average 100 grand a year into your company? You want to focus on the 100 and focus on serving them really, really well. And that's just how we kind of grew and had our market positioning, and that we were the go-to platform in the UK for business accounts, which ended up then evolving into offering SaaS pension support. And now we work with a number of the leading SaaS administrators in the UK doing pension accounts, corporates, trusts, family offices, law firms, supercar dealers, gold bullion dealers, you name it. We're across literally every kind of business sector in the UK now.
And just sort of closing the loop, I guess, talk to me about, if you can, the acquisition and what that process looked like and the decision to go that way.
The decision to do it was actually kind of, it was a bit of a milestone and an opportunity at the time. This is 2022 when we first met them. We're about a year past our first funding round that we ever did publicly with actually a single angel investor through a warm introduction. So again, the people-based kind of stuff. We were exhibiting at, it's called CC Data now, but it used to be called Crypto Compare, so one of the big London crypto events. We wanted to get the brand out there a bit more, so it was a bit of brand awareness, a bit of BD. Talked to a lot of people. I don't think I left a 2 by 2 meter square plot of land at our stand for 12, 13 hours in the day or something like that, and my staff were just feeding me coffees constantly. And these two gentlemen came up, and I didn't know who they were. They said, we're looking for a white label partner in the UK. Asked about the licensing, asked about our platform, asked about how we service our customers, what's our main core focus, where do we see the business in the market in 5 years. And that generated a conversation around licensing our tech and licensing our licensing through to Oanda. They'd already done a similar deal in America with Paxos for a broker-dealer / white label deal. And that's how the conversation started. And for the first few weeks, it was looking at the tech stack, obviously the NDA and that kind of stuff first. What do you want? Who are you trying to target? What do you do for marketing? This is what our tech stack can do. Do you want it to be a closed loop? Do you want it to be open? All of these other kind of conversations, etc. And the more we learn about them and about their customer base and about kind of their vision and their mission and their journey from being Oanda were the first people to put FX data rates online, 20 plus years ago. And it was kind of at that point, we'd been in business for 5 years. We'd grown organically, massively. We not only survived COVID, but thrived through COVID. We had to double the size of the company twice during COVID just to keep up. Did our first funding round, got the FCA license. We're starting to really professionalize some of the B2B part of the business. B2B was basically about 70% of our revenue at that time as well. And then one conversation, one of the follow-up calls at about month 3 was, would you guys consider an acquisition as part of like a strategic investment, but also as part of this, joint partnership on doing this white label deal? And the founders kind of went back, sat in our corner, talked about our journey, how long we've been doing this, is this an exit for us? Is it a chance to scale out? Is it a chance to really professionalize and build the business up? And it felt very natural at our 5-year point to work on an acquisition deal together. And then kind of section off our retail business, which is Oanda Crypto, and then keep CoinPass as a brand for B2B and for SaaS. Because trying to handle having 2 audiences in one brand is actually very tough. The only other, I suppose, competitors ours that do it really, really well, I would say, is probably Kraken and maybe Coinbase. You can use the same branding as the brand logo, but you've got to have very, very specific tonality, keywords, offering. You've got to have a simple and an advanced. You've got to have the right touch points, the right kind of click funnels, all that kind of customer retention stuff. But it is very, very tough to do it when you've got retail individuals that might put £100 or £1,000 a month. We also had individuals in high net worth that were doing 50 or 100 grand a month. Then we had our businesses, and then we had our SaaS pension. So we had a very, very wide spread of users, and it became very tough to do the marketing side of it because you're trying to disseminate down, one big message or multiple messages to different types of audiences. So splitting the user base into one brand and another made that obviously very simple, and allowed me to kind of focus and direct my time far more on our business customers and our SaaS customers that I have a very good relationship with.
And when we look at marketing in such a regulated industry, okay, splitting it between retail and business, it makes sense. But how did you approach compliant-led marketing versus maybe hype-driven, FOMO-led marketing in the crypto space?
Yeah, the FOMO type marketing is very, it's just that, it's hype, it's flash in the pan. You have to be doing something new literally every day. And that wasn't the kind of customers we were attracting. You know, we went through a phase through adding more tokens. We had like 15 tokens plus stable coins in 2021. And the majority of our volume was Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, USDC, USDT, top 5 basically. And we always had complaints we don't have enough selection, and that came up in our peer reviews, came up in our customer feedback surveys, and looking at our competitors and online reviews, and like Finder and all those kind of ones that do the online benchmarks. So we need to add some more assets. We need to work with a couple of more institutional liquidity providers, because we don't trade on our competitor exchanges. We only trade with our institutional partners, and they have limited liquidity. They have limited tokens that they offer. Are the tokens that they offer interesting to our user base? So we were adding them in kind of groups in 3 and 5 over the course of about a year or two. Got to like 30, 35 tokens. Looked at the landscape again on our offering versus our competitors. They're offering 300, 400, 500 tokens. But still, our main, cool, now we've got 30, 40 tokens. Our biggest sellers are Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, Polkadot a little bit now, Cardano a bit more now, and the stable coins. And we're still doing a majority of on and off ramp traffic. So that's where our speciality is. How can we make that, how can we make the pricing better? How can we make the experience better? And that's where we talk about optimizing a bit more rather than trying to add more. More is not always more. Then there's other platforms that are Bitcoin only. They only do one thing, but they're going down to like a Bitcoin only user base. And that's what we didn't find on the business side. They wanted some selection, but they don't want to trade, casino tokens, which is where staking and earning and that kind of stuff naturally came around, because a lot of property investors were selling their portfolios off. They were interested in Bitcoin. They're not interested in trading, but they are interested in getting a reward or some sort of yield on their tokens. And that's kind of where our less hype marketing, more compliance focused. Are we following the right conduct of business? Are we doing duty of care? Are these potentially at-risk kind of users? Are they being influenced? That goes into our customer care and our compliance feedback loop. And then financial promotions came out as well in last year before. A lot of my years kind of blend together, so I can't remember all of the exact years when some of the regulations came in, but making sure you have, fair disclaimer and warnings on all your marketing, very similar to CFDs. You see a CFD ad on the tube, billboard, whatever, very, very big and sometimes ugly disclaimer on the bottom, but you have to have it there. So I see all these kind of bits and pieces of, what does the market want? What does the market need? What does the regulator want and need? Putting all those together means the market is moving away from being a cottage industry, a bit underground, a bit cyber, to being a bit more of a mature market. And that's where real capital starts to flow in. When regulation comes in, when proper banking comes in, when proper marketing support comes in, like the stuff that you guys do with your FinProm compliance stuff, all of that kind of blended together makes for a better market and makes more people want to not either FOMO want to get involved, they see it as a strategic part of their portfolio. And those are the type of users we've been serving for like 8 years now.
And I suppose that you attract the good users from the boring stuff.
Yeah, well, sense. Yeah, the boring stuff is what's kept us in business, for over 8 years now. There were more competitors in the UK when we first started. There were a couple of other startups at the same time of us. Some guys that started after us that have collapsed. Some guys that have moved off to Lithuania or Latvia when the regulation came in, and they're still the same size. A shop of 3 or 4 guys. I like to think that we've listened to the market and listened to our users, and tried to pivot's the wrong word, but kind of like we were saying before we started recording. Like adjusting the recipe, not trying to add more ingredients.
And in terms of adjusting that recipe with a team or product, what do you think are the most important things that constantly evolve and you have to always be on top of when you're building a business in the crypto space?
That's really hard. What's the most important thing to stay on top of? Well, first of all, it's clearly the regulation bit, staying on the right side of the regulator, staying friendly. that has actually opened up a number of doors for us. So we work directly with the National Crime Agency. We work directly with the Met Police. We're not feeding data to them, but they can come to us and say, we've got this complaint from 2022. Do you have data on X, Y, and Z? And if it's Met Police, yeah, you work with the Met Police. You work with the NCA. That's allowed us to work on a few strategic projects with a couple of government agencies that were previously tracking laundered funds for like dark web pharmaceuticals or something like that. And a lot of that started to move to crypto. So they came to us saying, can you help educate us on how to track stuff on chain, and how do you guys use chain analysis? How do we do this? You know, what can you kind of educate us on and insight us with?
And do the regulators like the FCA do that too, or do you just find that's
probably
the more
not?
crime?
No, they're more at regulating the space and making sure it's a fair and safe market venue is more of the point. But by being, I suppose, proactive in our approach, it's allowed us to kind of put our brand out there as a trustworthy brand and open for conversation. And then we've had smaller government agencies come and want to work with us on certain things. Either, you know, we need to acquire some stablecoin to do this on this project, but how do we use our tools to the best effect? So we're kind of, you know, it's not advisory work and it's not that kind of stuff, but you're working with a government agency on trying to work our, you know, crypto has started to seep into their workflows and into their tracking. How do we help them enhance them? And it's not for marketing, it's not for else. It's about being a better market, being a market participant. Same, we've done some other projects with Scottish Police, Met Police, etc. They needed Ethereum to unlock a bunch of tokens to pay back to victims, you know, and that's fine. So we offer them a corporate account. It's not that hard to onboard and comply them. You work with them one-on-one, and you try and be that, you know, that good example of the market. Not getting kicked out of the UK constantly, or having to have, you know, sanctions or bans or anything put on any of your ad policies or anything like that. Trying to be open and listen to what the market wants, trying to be open and make good partnerships.
Which is ultimately key for survival. That's probably why some of the other ones have dropped off and you were able to be successful.
Being right on that grey line and being a bit risque has definitely not worked, especially in the UK. I think if you're in the decentralized token-only space, your directors and owners are all anti-doxed and you don't know who they are, then yeah, you can be as hypey as you want, but that project is probably not going to last more than 6 months to a year. We started when there was no regulation, and we're seeing the first temporary register come in onto a full registration. And for the team size we had at the time was, you know, I think very, very bullish. You know, the three founders writing our compliance docs, checking it with an external firm, from tech to business to future margin compression to business planning, customer care journey, support journey, all the stuff that went into it was way more than just a crypto license. It was, is this business fit for a UK standard, and is it going to be around in 5 years? That's what the regulator was really looking for.
And ultimately it led you to getting your FCA license, all that hard work.
Getting the FCA license, coming out the other side of it. You know, we've still got customers that have been trading with us since 2018. Not because we give them good discounts and deals and those other kind of bits, because we're here to listen to them when they want to ask a question or when they want to talk. And I think if someone comes to a platform, you know, they're already a buyer. They've seen a bit of marketing. They've looked at the landing page. They've had a bit of some of our customers are doing a deep dive on who the people are behind it. So I get, you know, hundreds and hundreds of LinkedIn requests of business owners that are looking at me as part of the due diligence of the platform. So I'm still very tied to the brand. But you know, when they come on board, we don't have to sell them anything. They're already a buyer. They want to buy some Bitcoin. They want to stake some ETH. Very, very simple. Sometimes I want to talk to someone to put a face to the name, or to, you know, build a relationship with, because they're interested in trust. You know, are we better than the poor image than a lot of other platforms have? So we're not so much in the defense all the time, but giving someone a good answer to their question actually sells far more than doing ads on Google or something like that.
And what's next for, I guess, FTMO recently came in. We've got changes in the crypto regulation in the market generally. So yeah, from your perspective, what are you excited about? What are you running at now? Yeah,
so the FTMO acquisition of we were acquired by Oanda. Oanda used to be owned by CVC Partners in the US, and now FTMO has acquired Oanda, and by extension acquired CoinPass's as well. Very tight-lipped on what kind of roadmap stuff we're doing just yet. I know what our users are asking for is not so much, you know, more selection in tokens. Definitely not. I think we've added our last tokens for the year, and I think we're going to put a pause on that for the moment. There's just nothing new that's coming out that's groundbreaking, etc. They're looking for better quality data. Everyone's far more interested in tax reporting now, so we have the crypto asset reporting framework with HMRC coming in 26 and 27. So people want deeper insights and analytics on their data. People want to have multi-user accounts because they were a single director, now they've put a business partner on, or their wife or family, whatever. They want multiple people to manage the portfolio, maybe not to trade but to read only. They want to get their accountants involved. They're looking for bank style statements, and not dressed up and pretty, but readable and usable. So we're doing a lot of kind of back end work on our data repositories. Again, how do we send out 100,000 bank quality crypto valuation statements on the first of every month? That's a technical challenge. Do we want to store 100,000 PDFs times 12 times how many years? No, we want to generate them and send them out in a clean and efficient way. Now we're looking at how we can develop our tech stack, not to blow up our Amazon bill, but to give better quality data to our customers. Mm-hmm. How do we update our UI to stay on trend with 2025, 2026, but still be unique and different to our competitors? So that's a big feedback survey challenge. And then with regulations coming in, there's a 2-year roadmap. Well, it's a 2-year roadmap. We're about 6 months through it. I still think it's a 2-year roadmap from January, personally. We've got 5 consultations to go through with the FCA. There's no grandfathering with our registration, so we have to do a change of permission. Any new entrants have to go for a full authorized and regulated FCA license, and the roadmap is 2 years long to what is going to be the industry standard for custody and for trading venue and pricing and for KYC compliance and all those segregation of assets, all those kind of things. We're already doing the majority of them anyway, because we're not a startup scale up sitting right on the grey line. We were acquired by a multinational regulated business that's in 9 different jurisdictions. So when we're acquired and we moved our HR function up, our operations function up, our finance function up, our compliance function up, we're operating with a global group that's highly regulated in a lot of jurisdictions. Just internally behind the scenes, we are kind of acting like a regulated company right now. Even though we're not required to, it's just far better business for our end users to be on top of everything before it happens. So when those consultations come in, I don't see a lot of pivoting and a lot of problems that are going to come in. We've got some aggressive delivery timelines for CAR for next year that are coming through December. So we're working very hard on those right now, mostly just to stay ahead of them and, for lack of a better term, wean our users into what the requirements are going to be, because CARF is going to be everywhere. UK, Europe, UAE, there's kind of no escaping it. There's different tax rules for different jurisdictions, but all the tax offices are working together. So having that data, that rich data environment, having it so it's automated, that's one of our big goals right now. But I think in terms of then product development, which is literally the last point that I'm coming on, is do we need to do stuff hype? Do we need to do stuff massively different? I don't really think so, because I think there's still a huge amount of the population that isn't in crypto yet, and they're following what the bigger money's doing. They're starting to see an erosion of savings. They're starting to see business models that don't work as well as they used to 5 years ago, and they're starting to open up to crypto a bit more. They don't want to have to jump onto a trading interface with 16 different buttons and flashy lights everywhere. They need something that's kind of simple, that works, that follows all the regulations, that gives them all the tax reporting that they need. And that's what we're aiming to build. So we might do a bit more on staking, because a lot of our investors and users love yield. Obviously working on pricing as much as we can to make sure we've got very competitive pricing compared to our competitors. Optimizing our onboarding to make the experience much better. And then lastly, maybe some other products around some decentralized finance. So you want to do DeFi at the moment, you have to use your own wallet. It's a bit clunky. It's a huge learning curve. But if you can put up 1,000 stablecoin and get a yield on it, that's cool. If you can put some, your idle deposit, your idle pounds or euros earn interest, that's cool. So having a few more of those kind of yield bearing kind of products we put under our earn product, I think would be quite good. And then opening up to using our infrastructure to support the FTMO family and the rest of the Amanda family. So using our infrastructure to scale out, because that's something we kind of paused through 2025. while the acquisition was going through. We have some very large strategic projects for the other group companies to start supporting spot crypto or staking or custody within the other group members. So
basically a lot. You've got a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's never, as we were just walking in today, how's December? Is it slowing down? No, not one bit. The market's 24/7. This is a 24/7 job. I might have days off, but there are still emails coming in. There are still Slack alerts. There are people that need either a bit of insight or an approval. And the way that we have a lot of our parts of our business structured, it's multiple eyes on multiple things. You have to be on it 24/7. I may look 50, but I'm only 40. Not
I was going to go 35.
It's not that this industry kills you, but I feel like I have the best job in the world, and I wouldn't trade it for anything else. I think this is an amazing market, and I think while Bitcoin at a stretch is really only at a 3 or a 4% adoption, there's still so much that's going to happen. Whether it's you can buy Bitcoin at your bank or DeFi access globally for everybody. I think there's a lot of markets that are going to become Web3'd, or they're going to be more inclusive of crypto and Bitcoin. And I think given the experience of building a business from zero, literally zero, working on it on our lunch breaks, after work, weekends, to again quitting a job, probably my best paying job ever, and my own businesses, to working with my co-founders, building a team, building a brand, deciding what our vision and mission was going to be, all of those kind of aspects has probably been the best 8 years of my life.
And that's the perfect segue, I guess, into the final section, which is pieces of advice and questions maybe I didn't ask that I should have. But just on the advice, for someone starting out either in fintech or crypto, or starting their own software business, are there any key principles you follow or pieces of practical advice you could share?
Well, if you asked me that question 8 years ago to now, my questions would be very, very different. I still think there's the analogy I used right at the beginning, the running away from a fire towards something shiny. Everyone wants to be wealthy. Everyone wants to have a better life. Your idea of wealth is definitely will change and evolve, and I think you need to be open to that. Some people want to get rich and buy a Lambo. That's great, but your idea of wealth will change and evolve over time. I come from a motorsport family, really big on everything, motorsport, boats, anything with an engine in Australia. I now haven't owned a car for nearly 17 years because I focus on my mobility and my freedom and being able to go to an event on a Thursday night and not even think about it. Being able to go to an event in another country and network with people. And that's why I have a global network of people that I talk to regularly now, because I'm able to do that. I don't have this big lumpy, extra car garage, extra this, extra that. I like to keep things simple because my idea of wealth has changed. But I think if you're going to start a business and it's going to be a startup, it's going to be a fintech, I think there's a couple of principles, from my experience, you need to be able to follow in order to be ultimately successful over the longer term. If you think you're going to build an AI business out of your basement right now and get funded for 10 million within a few months, it's not going to happen. You need to be unique. It needs to be able to go to market. It needs to be able to be, scalable from day one. It needs to be able to make revenue, even though you might be pre-revenue for a long time. It needs to have the ability to do it. And that comes from, our first 3 years, we got up to 18 full-time staff on purely organic revenue. Purely organic. Now, I wasn't taking a huge salary from that because we were thinking long-term. And there was a lot of sacrifice there. And I think you need to be able to sacrifice literally everything in order to do it. I think I remember probably our first year, we had an annual quarterly board meeting, and it got brought up. You're a key man risk to the business. We need to keep you alive. You need to sell your motorcycle. I'm like, that's rubbish. I'm not going to. We're worried about someone hitting you, and then we don't have a CEO anymore. So I had to sell my motorcycle, get rid of all my gear, all that kind of stuff to sacrifice to focus on the business. And I think lastly as well, this might be contrary to a lot of other stuff. People that start a business, open your life up, blah, blah, blah. Passion businesses don't sell. You might be really, really good at something. You might think you're the best and you're the leader in your class, and I'm going to start that into a business. It doesn't work that simply. You want to be a one-man consultancy business? Great, be a consultancy business, but you're going to have to be on marketing, BD, networking, content creation, everything that goes with it, just to make sure you're paying your basic living every month. That's not a business you can grow and sell. You might be able to build a brand behind it and then get other people behind you, but it's still a people service based business. Same with e-commerce. You could have a really, really cool brand concept, and you might make all your own clothing and gizmos and stuff that's on your e-commerce store, but there's thousands of them out there. How do you be unique? So I think a passion-based business is very, very tough. Ultimately, it's only going to be a lifestyle business, so you pay your rent, do some travel. Some people have done some really, really good things with it, but I think if you want to get something that's going to be a, an institutionalized kind of business that can attract funding, that can have 1,000 staff, and that's going to be worth exiting eventually, you need to really do your market research on where's a gap, how can I fill it, or how can I team up with the right people to fill that gap in order for it to be successful. Sometimes boring businesses sell really, really well. They don't have to be a lifestyle business, they have to fit a need. I know some of the wealthiest guys on our platform, they either run education courses, so they have a community, the community scales out. One guy owns a chunk of land and he puts containers on it, shipping containers, rents them out for £400 a month, hasn't had a void in 9 years. And he's like, I'm going to get another block of land and put another 52 containers on it. Why? Because it just services itself. It doesn't even have a website. Has it on a billboard he pays £100 a month for down near Bristol or Brighton or something like that. £500 a month times 50. Very, very simple. Doesn't live in the UK. Lives down in lives down in Italy.
Easy
you can have a boring business, or you could have something hypey and passion based. But what's the goal? You need to almost think of the exit first. What are the least amount of steps to get there, and be prepared to fail as fast as possible. The sooner you get to a no, the sooner you get to a failure, the sooner you can move on to something else. It's like trading without a stop loss. How much money and time are you willing to lose before you get to the point where you break even and win?
And it's like with a negotiation, almost a no is the beginning of the conversation.
Get to know as fast as possible. All those, all the books and those kind of really high level training, high level mindset stuff. It's definitely important. And trying to come up with a business overnight, I think it's a little bit methodical. A little bit mythological, coming up with a business overnight. I think if you were to literally look at a market segment, you need to do that 1,000 hours of research. Who are the competitors? Who are the winners? What's the size of the market? Do you stand a chance? Stuff that we came up against. Should we have quit and done something else? Maybe. But it wasn't part of our journey, because we were making money and we were growing. It was hard, but we carved out that niche and served it very, very well. And that's why we still have customers from 2018 to now.
And I guess it's that naive optimism of, even if you do all that stuff, sometimes you just got to do it.
Yeah, it's kind of like, going to the gym. Not everyone likes going to the gym, but you have to do it in order to stay healthy. Your health is kind of why you're here. If you're focusing on the wrong stuff, you will end up going down the wrong road. Following down the passion of, I want to have a clothing brand that does this and serve this community, and I'm going to have all of these followers and all these sales. When the sales don't come in, you start questioning it. The market will tell you if your idea is a good idea. And so you need to be opening to listening, opening to pivoting, and be ready to stop and start something new when an opportunity comes around.
Got it. Well, we're probably going to get kicked out soon. So anything you want to add? Any questions I didn't ask before we wrap up?
Not anything at the top of my head. I kind of need a bit of lead.
Yeah. No, good. I think we covered everything. Crypto, marketing, compliance, founding a business, selling a business. So, yeah, appreciate your insights. Thank you for coming on.
No, thanks for the invite. It's been good to be here.